next to the police station.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and if my voice lasts, we're going to have a great show. Listen, in the studio today with me today is Dr. Danielle Kostner, and with her is her husband, Kyle. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Excited
Mike.
to be here.
Listen, we're going to take a little deviation from our normal conservative politics and talk about sex if I can get my voice to last longer. One of the things, listen, on Facebook, I announced that you were going to be our guest today, and a fellow named Leroy Beck. I don't know if you know him or not.
No.
Nice person, but he commented, I'm going to have to quote him, her story is quite amazing. Her journey to pro-life, fascinating woman.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, and I thought that was kind of nice, but I wanted to start with that, if I might, before we actually get into it. You're pro-life?
Yes.
Were you once upon a time not?
Yeah, I was pro-choice.
You were pro-choice.
Yes.
Tell me, can you take him? Well, let's pause a little bit. Tell me a little bit about who you are first, but
Sure.
I don't want to miss that. I want to know how you got from.
Okay.
I want to know what Leroy's talking about.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
tell me a little bit about you.
Sure. So my name is Danielle Kestner, my husband Kyle, but we I'll kind of give you the short version is that we have been married 10 years, have 4 children, and he's an engineer in Holland, and I'm a family doctor up here in Muskegon. And I practice OB as well, so full scope family medicine with OB, and that's kind of the short story.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a whole bunch.
Yeah.
You're an engineer, is that right, Kyle?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very, very nice. Tell me what was the segue from pro-choice to pro-life?
Sure. Well, what happened is that I became a pregnant teenager myself. So when I was 17, I became pregnant. And the first time I ever had sex, I got pregnant. And although I knew, I had the full education in school and everything, so I should have known better. But later in life, we find out that our brains aren't fully developed till we're 25. So probably I didn't put it all together that pregnancy could occur. So bottom line, I became pregnant, and I had a beautiful daughter that I released for open adoption. So through that, the story is that she really kind of changed my life. That whole thing set me on a journey to really, truly at that time, just really depend on God in my life. And so I really prayed about it, and I felt really called for adoption. And her parents were really wanting another baby. They had adopted 2 other children, and they adopted her. And her mom was a family doctor.
Okay.
And so she really mentored me. She took me under her wing. She let me shadow her at work. And she really helped me to kind of take that journey to medical school. And she was very pro-life, obviously, of getting her children through adoption. So in shadowing her, she would talk to women about abortion and really ask them not to choose that her family was created through adoption. And she would pray for them that they would make the choice of life. And I always thought, wow, that's really judgmental. I think women should have 3 choices, and those are the choices they have. And so I always thought, well, I'm going to be different than her in that way. I'm going to let women make their own choice, even though for me, I was very blessed by adoption. So then I went to medical school and went in, kind of was in medical students for choice in medical school, and then came to practice here in Muskegon. I always felt called to the underserved, because when I became pregnant, I was a young, kind of in an underserved maybe category at that time in my life. So I always felt that I should go back to that group of women and help them. So I came to Muskegon, and I practiced full scope medicine, prescribed all sorts of birth controls, did IUDs, referred for contraception. And abortion was kind of a real touchy subject. Having children of my own now, I was starting to really feel like, ooh, I'm not sure about that.
Right.
So,
folks, let me stop you for a minute.
Sure.
Folks, as we go forward, if you get questions or want to debate this, argue it, please give a call. Phone number 855-357-1911. Tell me something. Do you two, either one of you or both of you, do you know Senator Arlen Meekoff?
No.
The reason
Not personally.
the reason I just want to inject this for just a second is I watched him recently at a debate leading up to the general election.
Yeah.
One of the topics that came up was he's extraordinarily staunch pro-life. Okay. His reason is he was adopted.
Okay.
And it was fascinating because it is kind of a political topic, and I don't mean for that to be today, but it has become that.
Yeah.
I watched the folks, they just excoriated him. They were just absolutely enraged with him. And he's very, very respectful but defiant on it. I wouldn't be here
That's right.
if that were an option.
That's right.
So how in the world could I possibly support
Right.
that?
Right.
So I just wanted, the reason I just wanted to inject that, because that part of your story, that conversion really was kind of the same.
It's so true. And it's so funny because I think a lot of times we just choose not to think about it.
Right.
And obviously he's had to think about it being adopted. And it's funny how I could go through that whole experience and still not take the time to really think through that whole thing.
Right.
I don't think I fully understood. I think I thought that, when it's so little, it's not a baby yet.
Right.
And now with advanced science and everything, we really know that these little people they really have everything they need. They just need food and shelter, just
Right.
like a 2-year-old, you know. So it was something I just hadn't thought enough about. I just listened to the media of the war on women and thought, kind of that myth of the war on women, that we should have all our rights and our choices and things like that.
To me, I'm a Jeffersonian. I'm about as limited government as you can possibly get.
Sure.
That said, I think one of the few charges of a government is to protect life.
Sure.
And that's what's kind of segued me into that direction. And I just, one of the things that I find fascinating nowadays is, you talk about our technology, is that the question becomes, what if the doctor can see that you have a handicapped child?
Right.
This child's going to be problematic.
Right.
Is a term I hear a lot in the political universe. I think problematic. I was born a tetralogy fallope patient.
Ah, okay.
And so I was problematic.
You were, yeah.
But since then, I've had 4 healthy daughters, and I've got 9 grandkids, and I do a radio show that some people like and some people not so much. So to me, it's about life. That's what the whole purpose of all of it is.
That's right.
So
that's wonderful.
Now, when you use a term, natural family planning.
Sure.
That's a Catholic term.
Some people think it is, but I joke that it doesn't stand for not for Protestants.
I love it.
It's for everybody.
What does it mean?
Natural family planning is basically a natural fertility regulation. It's a way to read a woman's signs of fertility in her body without using any devices, chemicals, anything like that.
Okay. Folks would say you have 4 children in 10 years. Whatever you're doing isn't working.
That's great. When we got married, I was on the pill. And when we got married, our priest said to us, gosh, you would love natural family planning because it's really healthy for marriages. The divorce rate is less than 4%. And I was very curious about that because my parents are divorced and Kyle's parents are divorced. So we were very interested in it just on that level. He thought I would be interested in it from a medical perspective. So long story short, we learned it just for that reason alone. And through that, we really I only wanted 2 children. He wanted 6. So we compromised and said 4. But
are you thinking you're done now, doctor?
I don't know. Now that we've used it for so long and it works so well, we know that we can kind of make that decision a few years from now. We don't have to decide today.
Okay.
So that's the beautiful thing about natural family planning, is that it works to prevent pregnancy 99% of the time. And when you want to get pregnant, it helps people get pregnant. So, people that struggle with infertility have used it. And the rates of pregnancy using the method I teach is equal to in vitro fertilization. So it works pretty well when you're trying to get pregnant, too.
Are we talking about scheduling sex? Reminds me of when I was a younger person, this was rhythm.
Sure.
Kind of what
you're thinking of.
It's what that's what,
sure.
From what I understand of what you're teaching, that's what I think of.
Sure. And that's really one of the myths of natural family planning, is that it is the rhythm method. It's not the rhythm method. The rhythm method, it wasn't very effective. It was about 85% effective, so maybe equal to condoms. So not terribly effective. This method was started in the 50s by 2 doctors that used the rhythm method to study it and took it to where the scientific studies show today. They've used over 850,000 women's cycles and hormone testing, cervical mucus testing, and all sorts of things to really give us the evidence today that shows us how effective it is.
Kyle, what do you think?
Well, most guys, when they hear natural family planning, the first thing they think is, wait, there's a week or so of abstinence that there's no sex, and guys focus on that right away. And back to our priest, he says, okay, before you get married, I want you guys not to have sex before you get married. And that was about a year. But he goes back to the people that do NFP and don't have sex and do this, they're more likely to stay married. And we both had divorced parents. We really wanted that. What can we do to stack the deck in our favor? So if this is going to have a better relationship, then we want to do that. So we did that. And one thing, guys, I mean, it made the honeymoon that much better. Absolutely. It's, if you're not, and it's, Mike, it goes back to kind of an economic principle called delayed gratification.
Right. The problem with that, though, Kyle, is that this is a society based on immediate gratification. Okay?
This is true.
It just is. So in my mind, I'm understanding from a layman's point of view the science of what we're talking about, but I also know that we've got a society that I often joke about have been affected by automatic doors. They don't have to open the door when they come in. They don't have to open it when they leave. They don't have to do anything except for what they want to do. Don't forget, folks, the phone number is 855-357-1911. Does that make sense when I say it? Am I just all wet with that? Or
No, it does. And that instant gratification leads to kind of pain and unhappiness. So if we can get to a delayed gratification, then we're not buying things we don't need. And when we do get to that point, we appreciate what we have that much better. So to NFP, if before Danielle, there were some purchases I made that I wish I wouldn't have.
right?
But then now that we're married, and when we got married, it's that much better. So even each month there's that period of abstinence, but then that delay, then it's that much more. It's like a honeymoon every month, and so it's almost more so than if we didn't have that delay. And one more thing, Mike, is that I didn't see this going in is working with her and understanding. It's much more communication,
Right.
and I respect her body that much more. Other relationships, it's more just an object for pleasure, and now it's much more relationship and just more respect for the body, and that we could be creating a life. It's very cool.
I'm wondering whether the abstinence, and to your point, the honeymoon every month, is that part of what causes the statistics for marriages to be more successful?
Who knows? I always wonder if one of the reasons is that it causes you to communicate about things maybe you wouldn't communicate about. So typically, we communicate about things like, oh, well, I'm tired, or I'm stressed, or we don't have money, or there's a lot, I've got a lot on my plate. And so what it does is it creates this balance of, he hears how I'm feeling, I hear how he's feeling, and it helps us to have that.
We're going to take a call from Gina from Spring Lake, who's got some questions, I think, about the pill, UIDs, etc. Gina, welcome to the show.
Hi.
What's your question?
I have a question for Danielle. Basically, I have had an IUD, I've used the pill, and have had the depot shot, and I have been pregnant on all of these.
Sorry, and I didn't hear the last part, Gina. What was the last part of your question? I heard that you've been on the pill, depot, and IUD and gotten pregnant on all of them. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
And you had a question right after that.
So is natural that could possibly help with that, in the fact that all of these other methods have failed?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gina. I have a lot of patients that come to me with that story. I wouldn't say a lot. I shouldn't say that. A few patients do come to me with that story of that. I've been pregnant on other things. And I had one girl say, all right, what is this NFP thing? Because I've been pregnant on the pill and depot, and I do not want any more children, but I don't want to do anything permanent about that. And so she learned it with some hesitation, but absolutely loved it. And 2 years later ended up wanting to have another child. Probably just, a lot of it is that every month having the conversation, it makes it a little bit more exciting. So definitely NFP is something that could work for you. And a lot of people ask me the question, Gina, if I have irregular cycles, can I still use this? And absolutely you can. There's certain methods you can't use with that, but the one that I teach, called the Billings method, you can use with irregular cycles. So you'd be a great candidate.
Okay.
Very, very nice.
And how would someone get? How would someone be able to learn this method or become,
Sure.
eligible or whatever?
What a great question. Most people will come and see me in my office, but they don't even have to do that. Women can go on to a website called billingslife.org, and they can actually go on there and just read more about the method and then search for a teacher. We actually have 3 new teachers here in Muskegon and 3 in Grand Rapids that were just trained. So we have lots of availability for teachers. What they would do is call one of those teachers. It's an hour class. The couple usually learns the method together. Mm-hmm. And the first class is an hour. And then after that, the follow-up appointments are about 15 minutes. And most women need about 2 or 3 follow-ups to feel confident with the method.
Doctor, what was that website again?
It was billingslife.org.
Gina, thank you very much for your phone call. Folks, we're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back.
90 WKBZ.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and we're in today with Dr. Costner and her husband, Kyle. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We're talking about sex today, a little deviation from our normal conservative thing, but not so much, since my call perpetually on the show has been finding ways to save the American family, which I think is just absolutely critical.
Absolutely.
So when I heard the divorce rate on this, I said, I want these folks on the show. That's really what happened.
Yeah.
Listen, while we were at break, Oscar started to ask a question, and I stopped him. I said, before you do that, let's get on the air. Oscar, what's your question for the doctor?
I guess the question, well, it wasn't for the doctor, it's for her husband here, as far as how did you feel by giving it up for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, especially a year? I mean, come on, how did you handle this, and how did you manage it without having frustration?
For sure. No, absolutely. So
I am a man, so I do know about that.
Well,
yeah.
the desire doesn't go away, right, Oscar? So that's definitely there. The year was tough, but it was a lot of just communication, working together. But it's kind of the dream. You have the dream out there, and it's looking forward, and it's a lot of anticipation. So that was kind of exciting, and it just made the honeymoon amazing. But so the monthly, the desire's there, but it's the anticipation at the end. So it's almost, well, let's schedule a date night, and it's interesting with the method that people ask. There's actually an app for that. There's an app.
Of course there is.
So right on the app, it's you can see exactly what's going on with your wife's body.
You can stalk me.
Wow.
Well, and you can plan out. You can see, oh, okay, I see right where we are, and I know in 3 days from now, honey, let's go to the movies, and so it's very back to what Danielle was saying. There's communication there,
folks.
There's anticipation, and from what I hear, some people it's actually more. I have friends that talk about it's been months since they've had sex, and this actually can be more sex because it's anticipated.
Folks, listen, if you've got a question, you can call at 855-357-1911, or if you would rather, on this particular topic maybe, either go to our Twitter page, which is Talk Mike Hewitt, or find us at Facebook /The Mike Hewitt Show, and you're more than welcome to like us, follow us, and ask a question. It's being followed right now. So,
and any question is welcome, even if you totally disagree. We like those and appreciate any of those questions as well.
I'm wondering if there's not a lot of people thinking, you know what, you're turning something romantic into something very scientific.
Sure.
Sure. Get your calendars out and let's schedule this, and have your secretary call my secretary, and
sure. And it can feel like that if you let it. So that is one of the downsides, is trying to make sure that it doesn't become just like that. Sure. That's a good point.
It is just, I know there's people thinking that.
Sure. And I think if you get so caught up in it, you can make it kind of feel that way. The great thing about the method that we teach, though, is that from a day-to-day basis, he says, in 3 days we'll be available. We might not be. And so that can be a challenge. And going back to Oscar's question, is it helps us do other things that create intimacy that don't involve sex or intercourse. So we learn to love each other in different ways, which a lot of couples don't do. And I know for women, I can say that we really appreciate those other ways a lot more.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and before this, back to the kind of objectifying, I actually think this has more romance because it is more of a union and more planning, more intentionality. Where before it was more you're there for my pleasure, more objectifying women. So
From your vantage is what you're saying.
From a guy's standpoint.
So you're saying
yeah.
this causes it to be more mutual.
Yes, and more
Rewarding?
more romantic because
Okay.
otherwise it's just okay every night, or this is just what we do. You're here for my pleasure. It's not an object for pleasure. It's we're working together.
Okay, so it's not a question of the remote, the refrigerator, her body, just a function in life.
Yep,
That's what you're saying.
exactly.
Does that make sense, Doctor?
Yeah, it does. And I think I don't want to make it sound too fantasized in some ways. I want to make sure I'm really clear that it is a challenge sometimes, and it's not necessarily just all cookies and cream, I guess. There are times where it's difficult, and other couples have said that, gosh, it's really difficult during that time to wait, and especially when you're first learning it, to be able to learn it. Usually we talk about there's a 2-week period of abstinence when you first learn the method so that you can really understand what's happening with a woman's body. And the sign that we use is cervical mucus. So not to talk about mucus on your radio show, but that's the sign we use.
It's okay. I've had a lot of politicians on here.
So that's the sign that a woman uses is her cervical mucus and the sensation that she feels as she walks about the day. There's other methods that are also 99% effective that use temperature and cervical mucus combined. So there's really 3 main evidence-based methods.
Temperature. So as a couple, are you taking temperature? Is that what
We're not. We have done that method in the past, and it worked great. So I have nothing bad to say about it. But for us, we really liked the simplicity of the 4 rules only with the Billings ovulation method. So
We first did temperatures, and as an engineer, I thought that was fun to chart everything out, and I could know exactly what was going on. But some people don't like the charting. And
I don't know how many people would want to take their analytical mind to the bedroom.
besides engineers.
Yeah, besides engineers. That's very funny. I'm wondering, though, in my mind, the realism side of this.
Sure.
Honest, because what I'm wondering, it sounds like a great plan. Yep. I'm with it. I understand it.
Sure.
And then there's that time when the emotions of the moment take command, and it doesn't matter what the calendar said
Sure.
or the charts. And now we've got a child that we didn't want.
Sure. Well, the cool thing is I've never had someone say I didn't want. They really know that they could get pregnant. And by the time they really know their bodies, they know that this is probably going to create a child because it's that effective. And so what happens is they make a decision that, you know what? If a baby comes, then that's great. Then we'll welcome that baby. So I don't have people that come and say, oh, I'm devastated. Now, I want to say this, that some women think they're using natural family planning by just going and downloading an app that says NFP. I want to really be careful not to say that that's what you can do. You really need to learn one of the evidence-based methods, because I have had women go on and think that I'm talking about just going downloading any app that says NFP and then using that. That's the rhythm method, and they do end up pregnant, and so they aren't very excited when they have an unplanned pregnancy that way.
I guess I got to tell you, I really am an old-fashioned father knows best guy, because I'm trying to get my head around the idea that I can see this from the vantage point of a app I put on my iPad.
Isn't that wild?
I'm not making that connection. I get it. I understand. But,
Yes.
But I'm definitely old school.
That's funny. That's funny.
And I'm okay with that, too, by the way.
That's great. That's great.
So when you're first counseling, are you counseling mostly the women or the couples, or how does that work?
It depends. It just all depends on who's coming. Sometimes they're just coming to me to discuss all their options, and we discuss all sorts of things they've tried before, or maybe methods they're interested in. I personally have come from a place of really working at Planned Parenthood, volunteering there, counseling women on all their options of birth control. So I always think of myself as an expert in contraception because
You worked at
I
Planned
studied
Parenthood?
so much of it. I actually volunteered there to help
Wow.
women decide what sort of birth control method they
To
were going to
me,
use.
They're like evil incarnate. I can't think of a worse place in America.
Yeah, me
I can't.
too now,
I'm
but-
honest. When I look at them, I see a racist organization.
Absolutely.
I do.
Yeah, me
And
too.
So I just, they're like the absolute worst underbelly of something I reject entirely.
Yeah, and
So-
it's funny because I actually came to this conversion. I was getting really burnt out at work.
Right.
And I was feeling like, gosh, all these women are getting pregnant on these methods I'm prescribing. And I told them how to use it. I told them that if they forgot a pill, take it as soon as they remember and use a backup method. And I told them all these things. Why are they still getting pregnant? I was so frustrated. And I was getting really burnt out in the population I was serving. And what I did is I took some time for prayer. And in that prayer time every morning, I was feeling God calling me not to prescribe birth control. And I thought, oh, you're crazy. That is a crazy idea.
It's a fascinating conversation to have with God.
Exactly. And I just put it out of my mind, but every day it came back.
Okay.
And it was this time when I went to my priest and said, what do I do? Like, I really don't think I should be prescribing. And he said, well, I can't tell you what to do, but I think you should listen to God, And so that was pretty neat. So he kind of washed me of my sins and all these things and started to really get nervous, like, oh my gosh, am I never going to prescribe again? And I did a lot of research. In the next 3 weeks, I became like this sponge of just information and realized that a lot of the methods actually are abortifacients. They say that they prevent ovulation, but many of them actually don't prevent ovulation all of the time. And so they can still be a conception that occurs that then falls through. And so I realized that a lot of these methods are abortifacients and that, man, that's not okay with me. And so it was in that time where I actually called into work and said, I'm not sick, but I'm like spiritually sick. I don't know what to do. I can't go into work because I don't think I could prescribe birth control. And that's what I do all day.
Right.
So I called in and said, cancel all my patients. And I actually prayed about it, didn't know what to do. And I decided, okay, I should go to Mass. Well, all the churches were already done with their daily Mass, so I only found one in Muskegon.
Right.
And the one in Muskegon, the guy, during his homily or sermon, he talked about ending artificial contraception and abortion in our country. And I thought, well, that's crazy. No one talks from the pulpit. You know what I mean? And as I'm leaving church, all of a sudden they start doing this prayer to end artificial contraception and abortion. So I stayed for the prayer because I thought, well, that's weird. They don't.
Little chill go down your spine?
Yes. And then I'm walking out of church, and this lady falls in front of me. And I said, I'm a doctor. I can help you. And she's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just my knees. And I go up, and we start talking. She goes, I haven't seen you here before. These aren't very full during daily Mass during the week. And I said, oh, well, I'm a family doctor, and I'm just feeling like I'm going to just do NFP only in my practice. And she goes, well, that's crazy. I'm the NFP person for this Muskegon area.
So it sounds like God threw her out in front of you.
Oh, my word. I just was like, okay, God, I get it. And so she really helped me get set up with some local people that I could partner with.
Do you think he's thinking, boy, she's hard-headed. What have I got to do?
Exactly. I think so. So, yeah, that really inspired me to say, I don't want to offer my patients nothing. So it really inspired me to look for something I could offer them that was simple, easy. Anyone could learn it, even if they had irregular cycles, even if they couldn't read, something that was really simple. And Mother Teresa taught this method in India for 16,000 different women, and her unplanned pregnancy rate was less than 1%. So pretty neat.
I'm glad you brought that last part up because I really wanted to get into the percentages a little bit.
Yeah.
You talked about condoms earlier. I think you said 85%.
Sure, yeah.
Tell me just the top 5 or 6, if you would.
Sure.
Top whatever number there is.
Sure.
Of birth controls. What are their effective or efficiency rates? What would you expect, doctor?
Okay, so the condom is like 85% effective, and similar with that is the withdrawal method, like 84% effective. And you might see different percentages, but they're close to these in different books or different articles. The pill is anywhere from 97 to 99% effective. Depo, similarly, 97 to 99% effective. Sterilization, like vasectomies and tubal ligations, are 99% effective.
So even those are not entirely...
No, we still have the occasional case. I just had a woman last year that had her tubes tied and had 4 children and all of a sudden pregnant with number 5. And at the end of it, she said, this is a blessing and I'm happy. But she was definitely not happy when she first found out, because what she had planned, and this is what I found, my patients that just took a birth control or did something, they didn't want any more children. And so that was a real shocker to them when they came back pregnant. The great thing with NFP is, when you cheat, when you break a rule. And so it's not always a surprise. It's not usually a surprise when you're pregnant.
One of my daughters was trying to tell me that she was pregnant before she was married.
Okay.
So she comes to me and she says, Dad, what would you do if you found out there was going to be another child in your family? I said, I would go out in the garage and hang myself. Okay. I was being, making fun of the circumstance.
Sure.
I wasn't serious, but
sure.
Anyway, she chickened out of telling me that time. So
of course, she kind of liked her dad a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. But anyhow, so that's a big thing. Kyle, how long did it take you to get into this cycle, for lack of better words? Are you in it, and is it just science, or how do you perceive it?
Oh, well, now we've been doing this for so long. It's just normal operating.
Just the way it is.
Normal operating procedure.
Okay.
Yeah, this is.
At first, it was really it seemed like a lot of information, and I thought, this is so scientific. I mean, I didn't even learn this in medical school. I feel like I should have learned this in medical school. I feel like this is something they should have taught me.
Is that but the medical industry, for lack of better words, doesn't probably put a big, shiny star beside this process.
No. But I think there's no money behind it. I think that's the biggest reason, is that there's nothing there to promote it. You know what I mean? When the drug companies are promoting something, they're very good at it.
Oscar's
they have a lot of money.
Oscar's nodding up and down with a big grin, because I think he entirely agrees with you on that.
Exactly. Yeah.
If they could find a way to charge for the app, maybe.
Exactly. Oh, the app is like $2 a month. So I wish it was free in some ways, because I feel like some women that have absolutely really low financial, it's really difficult for them. So I tell them, become a teacher, because then it's free.
Is there on that point of income, is there the old paper method or something that could be in lieu of a
absolutely
of an app?
Yeah, actually, in some countries, this is in 120 countries.
Okay.
They actually use on their mantle, they'll use sticks and stones and different things like that to represent the stamps. So it's you can do paper, stickers.
That's like
apps.
Getting married by walking under the broom or something.
Exactly. Hey, it works. The whole family knows where Mom's at in her cycle.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
Real quick on the percentages, though, that she was saying, up to 99% for pill.
Right.
That's if you follow the rules for the pill.
Right.
And Danielle sees often, especially young kids, if we can't trust them to get to the bus on time, how do we trust them to take the pill and follow these steps? And
I got to tell you, of course, I can't see this from the vantage point of a female, but with my own medication that I was taking for my heart issue, I do it every single day. I don't now, but for years I did, and it got to be a blur. But jeepers, did I do it already?
Yes.
And I don't want to take it again, because 2 is a problem.
Yes.
1 isn't good either, not taking 1 rather. And it got to where I ended up having to do the where you go to the drugstore and you get the little
pill box
that's got the days labeled out, because if it was still there, that meant I didn't take it. But
that's right.
my point in using that as an example is I can see where this could cause a problem.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that happened. And I think that's why the CDC is pushing for IUDs and sterilization as much as possible. And what I'm seeing is a lot of women and couples that are in pain. I mean, they decided to do a sterilization or something permanent, and 3 to 5 years later, inevitably, they come back and say, well, I really wish I would have had more children.
Yeah. Folks, listen, write this down. 855-357-1911. We're going to go to a break. We'll be right back.
take the one.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. Listen, I've been so excited about the conversation we're having. I forgot no pun intended. Listen, easy with the music there, Oscar. Don't get excited. Listen, I wanted to make a couple announcements as we go forward before we dive back in our last segment here. The first is one of our sponsors is Polano Consulting. If you've got a small business or a huge business, if you're IBM or a mom and pop shop and you need some financial consulting, you can go to polanoconsulting.com. I think you'll like the service you get there. And on a important to the show note, this is the last Sunday that the Mike Hewitt Show will be on Sunday. We are packing our bags and moving to Wednesday morning at 9 a.m.
Awesome.
And listen, I'm really, really excited about that move, just because I'm going to have a free Sunday, and I think that I just a better fit for the show. I'm very, very excited about it. So that'll be Wednesdays from now on, Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. So we've been making an appointment together for the last couple of years. If you would, just adjust your calendars and let's set a new appointment for Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Oscar, did you have a question you were wanting to ask? I thought you had another question there.
Or a comment.
I wasn't sure how to put it, so I wanted to test it during the break.
During the break, did you find some politically correct way of asking the question?
Not really, but
I told him, just ask it.
Yeah. As far as like I say, is going back to the waiting. Do you, and as far as when you guys do get together, do you do something to stimulate yourself to actually have orgasms? I guess that's the only way I can think of to say it. Yeah,
that's the only way to put it. I think especially at first, there were a lot of what are all the other things we can do if we can't do this? What are the other ways? And even when Danielle isn't there, masturbation comes up a lot. So there are other avenues that we toyed with for a while.
It's a literal term. I like
yeah,
it.
I know. I didn't say a thing. Didn't say a thing.
I thought that was a faux pas. No, he said that on purpose.
I love these good questions.
But the longer it goes, I think.
At first, masturbation and mutual masturbation was a big part of what we did because it was hard. And over time, learning more about the method and learning more about why kind of God intended it this way, we now realize that we want to give ourselves fully to each other when we do, and not to waste that seed or waste that stuff when it's not the right time. So we actually have really struggled with that very same thing. And some couples do use it that way, where they will just not have intercourse, but they'll do mutual masturbation or whatever. And so I think now that we understand it and love it so much more, we don't actually do that. And we struggle hard to make sure that we're not having the orgasm outside of intercourse.
In that sense, you're trying. That's more theological than it is science.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
And part of that, and most guys find this hard to believe, but so masturbation is very. It's just self-pleasure. So kind of going back to just objectifying the woman just for pleasure for self. And so if I'm trying to become a better person, and that's just pleasing myself, I caught myself, okay, the kids are playing upstairs, and if I'm masturbating, I'm not with my kids. It's a very inward-looking thing. And so that's why we try to cut that out. And how can I spend more quality time with my wife and my kids? And it's very difficult.
Especially because Kyle travels to Mexico a lot for work. So I know that's a real challenge for him to try to maintain that.
It's way better than having him out messing around.
That's right. Oh, yeah. It's like, that doesn't even come into our minds anymore.
But it's acceptable for other people, is what you're saying, though. If they do go with this method, it's still acceptable for other people to go that route. They're
going to use this method however they're going to use it. Okay. It's their method.
Everyone does different.
But doctor, if you've got a couple in your office, are you counseling them on the oral sex and all of that, or is that not part of your recipe when you're counseling a couple or a person?
It's not part of my recipe anymore because I understand more about true pleasure or happiness versus pleasure. And so I know that that's not going to bring them the happiness. It maybe bring them the short-term pleasure, but it's not going to be sustained beyond the activity producing it. So I think when we talk about happiness and with ourself and others, we really, that delayed gratification is a principle that doesn't change, whether it's regarding sex, money, or whatever. So,
Kyle, is she right? A lot of people are going, wow, poor Kyle.
Poor guy. No. What do I say to that? No, she is right. She is right.
I'm wondering, does he say that because he doesn't have a choice? What do you think, Oscar? You can see
I'm not sure what to say.
You can see the expression on his face other than the blush, which is kind of fun, folks.
But Oscar had a great question or comment, and I'm not sure if you'd feel comfortable sharing it, Oscar, but it's a great comment that I think it makes an important point.
Well, quite a few years ago, with my first marriage, we were Catholic, and she was very strict Catholic, and so we looked at the Billings method, but read the book and everything else, but I just wasn't real comfortable with it, and probably didn't follow through like I should have. But I mean,
and what happened?
I can't. Well, nothing really. I mean, I can't say anything negative happened because I have three beautiful kids that I love, and all that good stuff out of that marriage. And
sure.
So I mean, but the first one wasn't really expected. Put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, and I think
Oscar,
that's a good point.
let me ask you this, not wanting to get into your personal role too much, but do you think if you would have stuck to what Doctor is telling us today, that marriage may have been saved?
Wow.
Whoa, that's a
now
deep
I'm
one.
really on the spot, aren't I?
That's good, though.
I don't
you can
think,
turn your mic off.
I don't think so. No.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay.
I think it's a good point, though, that Oscar makes, is that it does take two people to do this method together. So I don't have any kind of I know that some single women will use this method, but I know they're not going to be as successful as they would be if they had a partner that was in the method with them, understanding it, learning it. And frankly, a lot of guys are better at this than women. They are maybe a little bit more detail-oriented, depending on the person.
The engineers out there?
Well, exactly. Depending on the personality. I always like couples to come together because there's always usually one that's more detailed and one that's not. And so sometimes the more detailed one's the guy, and he's the one that understands the method, grasps it better in the beginning than she does.
So there's a lot of women right now going, oh, brother, I'm married to an artist. Okay.
But that's okay, because, I mean, as long as he supports her, and it sounds like, Oscar, you really were kind of like, this isn't going to work.
Well,
and,
like you said earlier, though, you did say that when you do make a mistake, you pretty much know that.
Yeah.
And I did.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't like I said, well, this isn't going to lead to a pregnancy, because I kind of knew.
We kind of knew.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I hear a lot.
Surprise.
Yeah.
That's great, though. Thank you for that.
That is too funny. So, are there different practices of this, or is this different methodologies that people? Is there only one, or
no? There's multiple. There's three that I'm very familiar with that are 99% effective, and that's the symptothermal method, Billings ovulation method, and then the Creighton method.
Okay.
And so they're all a little different, and they all work very well. So
if we can, we've got just a little bit of time left, but one of the things I wanted to make sure we touched on, and I didn't know this until we got into the first segment today that I wanted to touch on it, but tell me a little bit about your colleagues in the medical industry. The Hippocratic Oath, and I'm trying to get my head around that on abortion, and so I'm wondering if there's a percentage that or if is it just like a normal swath of the American public? Some are pro-life and some are not. What are you finding with your colleagues in the medical industry?
My colleagues, a lot of them are actually very pro-life, and they don't actually refer for abortion services. That doesn't cross over then when they think about contraception. They think of contraception as preventing pregnancies, and therefore preventing abortion is the way they think of it and the way I used to think of it. So I think, the colleagues I personally work with are very pro-life. But
that's probably because of the atmosphere you've placed yourself in.
Yeah, I do. I do think that, a lot of my colleagues tend to, I like that. I love working with them because they are very pro-life and very supportive of me, which I appreciate because a lot of times, I could be looked at as the outsider, or that's very out of the norm of what we do in medicine. We give people what they want. It's their choice kind of thing.
Well, I think probably you do give them what they want. And I say that because they want to be able to plan on a pregnancy.
Sure.
They want to have a marriage that's successful.
Sure.
That's what I'm hearing you two talk about today is let's plan when we're going to be pregnant and let's have a successful marriage. Who could say, I don't want that?
Right. hey, I'm glad we agree on something. I'm sure there's people out there that don't agree with us. And some of them medical people, and they take the Hippocratic Oath, and they think that I first do no harm is actually that I'm doing harm by not prescribing. And so, I just appreciate their perspective because I once was there. And so I don't feel like they're bad by any means. I think they're doing what they think is best.
So you think
just like I was doing what I thought was best.
You think those folks would be critical of your position on the topic?
Not all of them, but some of them would be absolutely
kind
critical.
Of a look down their nose kind of thing, or literally think you're doing wrong?
Maybe a little bit of both, depending on the person.
Okay.
Yeah.
But definitely they're going to think you're an outsider, to use your word.
Yeah. I think it's seems a little on the outside. I think eventually, with scientific literature going the way it is and everything, I think that eventually, and the big green push, organic push, all natural push, I think eventually women will use this as their first choice. And then if there was medical issues, they would then turn to some of the hormonal methods out there.
Sometimes in the political arena, which is where I spend most of my free time when I'm not running
Yes,
a
you
gun,
do.
when I'm not running a gun shop, which isn't political at all. At any rate, it feels like there's a disconnect between reality and politics sometimes. Lately, of the last decade or so, well, probably 3 decades, there's been this push about the equality of men and women. And by the way, I believe that men and women are equal, but I don't think that they're the same.
That's right.
And so this kind of highlights that a little bit.
Definitely. I joke about that in my practice. When couples learn this, they realize why men tend to be very much the same, consistent emotionally from day to day to day, because their hormones stay the same. And for women, we realize why maybe today and tomorrow and the next day we may have different feelings that come up and are expressed differently.
It's difficult. It's difficult for me to get my head around that those changes, because to your point, does Tuesday, what difference does it make? Or Sunday, what difference does it make? I don't. Absolutely. There's that disconnect. But I just find it such a fascinating thing that the political environment wants to paint everybody as the same.
That's right.
When we just aren't.
That's right.
And by the way, there's differences from women to women and men to men. I just differences, acknowledging differences, doesn't take away people's equality. I don't understand that sometimes.
Yeah, I think those natural laws are there, and if we choose to understand what that natural law means and is, it enriches our experience even more.
Yeah, tell me how. If the people that are listening right now, if they want to get hold of you, how do they reach out to you and visit you in practice? And
Sure. I'm at Hackley Community Care in Muskegon, and my office phone number is 231-737-1335, and just ask to make an appointment with Dr. Kessner. Or I have 4 midwives that work with me as well that are amazing. And if someone knows they want to just have a midwife, that's a great option, and then I work directly with them, so they can always see either of us.
Somehow this feels like a perfect time to talk about Design to Dine if you're going to be getting married, and you need someone to do some catering for you. Give Design to Dine a phone call. First is design-to-dine.com, but forgetting that, the easy way, 616-259-0286. So if all this didn't work and you're going to have a child and a marriage and a wedding and something to celebrate, all jokes aside, listen, Kyle, thank you very, very much for putting yourself in this position on this show today. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Oscar.
And Doctor, thank you for all of you do.
Thank you.
And folks, we will talk to you on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Have a great Sunday.